The Dwarven Kingdoms. Hello, and welcome back to another video from Secrets of the Rings, where we celebrate and delve deep into all things Tolkien. Today we explore the histories of the Dwarven Kingdoms, and their role in the events of Middle-earth. When did they come into being? Who were the greatest leaders and warriors among them? If you enjoy our videos, please like and subscribe for more content, and let us know what you would like to see more of. Renowned for their skills in craft and war, the history of the Dwarves begins even before the awakening of elves and men. During the years of the trees, Aule, the smith of the Valar and leader of the shaping of the world, grew eager to spread his teachings with new life, as the envisioned children of Ilúvatar had not yet awoken. He created the Dwarves in secret and began to teach them a language he had devised, known as Khazad-dum. This took place at a time known as the Sleep of Yavanna, where Middle-earth was a dark and frightening place that Morgoth's creations roamed. Thus, Aule took it upon himself to balance the region with hardy and determined beings, as the Dwarves would prove to be. Dwarves were not created by the direct will of Ilúvatar, as elves and men would be. Therefore, upon discovering them shortly after, he questioned Aule, who was quick to humility, giving up the dwarves to Ilúvatar to do with as he wished, even offering to destroy them. But Ilúvatar would spare them, under the condition they remain asleep until after the awakening of the elves. At first there were 7 of them, known as the 7 Fathers of the Dwarves, and Aule scattered them amongst the lands of Middle-earth to await their rebirth. The 7 houses of the Dwarves were the Longbeards, also known as Durin's folk, originally from Gundabad, the Firebeards, and the Broadbeams from the Blue Mountains, who would go on westward to found Belegost and Nogrond, respectively, and the Ironfists and the Stiffbeards, along with the Blacklocks and Stonefoots, who originated in the east. The Dwarves, also known as the Nogothrim or the Naugrim, go on to create many wonders of the world, and would find themselves populating a number of different realms that grow rich under their control. But before the dwarves as we know them begin to take part in the epic tales of Middle-earth, the petty dwarves, or Norgith-Nibin, traveled first into Beleriand as a collection of exiles. They were initially mistaken as game by the Sindar and the Green Elves, and secluded themselves out of sight, harboring resentment for the taller and more graceful elves. They went on to establish the caves of Nuluk-Kizdin, later known as Nargothrond, as well as Aman-Rud, or Sharbund, as they named it. Little of note took place there while they possessed it, but they were the first dwellings of dwarves in the west. There were 2 major strongholds for the dwarves in the First Age, Nogrond and Belegost, located in the Ered Luin, or the Blue Mountains, at the easternmost boundary of Beleriand. The dwarves of these realms would endure both friendship and rivalries with the neighboring elves. Belegost, which is Sindarin for Mighty Fortress, is referred to as Gabilgathol by the dwarves, and is the home of the Firebeards and or the Broadbeams, located just north of Nogrond, on the eastern side of Mount Dolmed. Despite the elves originally mistaking them for game when meeting the petty dwarves, the dwarves of Nogrond and Belegost would begin trading with those who dwelt in Beleriand, namely the Sindar. King Thingol of Doriath would entrust them with the construction of Menegroth, the 1,000 Caves, for which they received payment in pearls. In First Age 472, Belegost would join the Nirneth Arnoediad, the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, that saw the union of Maedhros take on Morgoth's evil forces. The dwarves supported the effort with their skills in smithing, as well as on the Eastern Front, with their physical durability and skills in combat. They were donned in full body armor, making them a frightful sight to enemy eyes, and resistant to dragonfire. Azagol, king of Belegost, would be slain in battle against the mighty Glaurung, father of dragons, but not without landing a significant blow to the underbelly of the beast. And but for them, Glaurung and his brood would have withered all that was left of the Noldor. But the Naugrim made a circle about him when he assailed them, and even his mighty armor was not foolproof against the blows of their great axes. And when in his rage Glaurung turned and struck down Azagol, Lord of Belegost, and crawled over him, with his last stroke Azagol drove a knife into his belly, and so wounded him that he fled the field, and the beasts of Angband in dismay followed after him. Then the dwarves raised up the body of Azagol and bore it away, and with slow steps they walked behind, singing a dirge in deep voices, as it were a funeral pomp in their country, and gave no heed more to their foes, and none dared to slay them. The Silmarillion of the Fifth Battle, page 193. Nogrond, or Tumunzahar, would have a more adversarial relationship with the elves over time. Sindarin for the Hollow Dwelling, Nogrond was a sister city located just south of Belegost, and host to Firebeards and Broadbeams. It served to guard one of the only passageways to the eastern side of the Blue Mountains, and was home to many of the great dwarven smiths, such as Gamil Zirak and his student Telkar. Telkar was responsible for the crafting of Angrist, Narsil, and the dragon helm of Dorlomin, all of which are vital objects in the lore of Middle-earth. Maeglin, the Dark Elf, would travel there at times to learn from their great smiths. The most notable period of Nogrod's history may lie in their dealings with and against King Thingol. The deeds of the Nogrod would fracture any bond of dwarves and elves thereafter. The dwarves of Nogrod and Belegost had crafted a beautiful necklace called Nauglamir that bore the jewels of Valinor across the sea, and it was gifted to Finrod Felagund, a revered Noldorin elf. The necklace would eventually be recovered from Nargothrond, where it was left behind by Finrod on his fatal quest to retrieve a Silmaril with Beren of the Edain. Hurin Thalion was the man who delivered it to Thingol in Doriath. The Elven king sought to repurpose the necklace to bear the Silmaril he possessed, courtesy of his daughter Luthien and the aforementioned quest. But in hiring the dwarves of Nogrod to assist in the working of the Nauglamir, Thingol orchestrated his demise. The dwarves were enamored by the beauty of the jeweled necklace, and remembering for whom it was initially crafted, believed they had the right to keep it. They would slay Thingol, leading to the eventual Battle of the Thousand Caves. The dwarves of Nogrod were vicious in slaying the elves, as the girdle of Melian that once protected the realm of Doriath was no longer active. Those dwarves that fought and seized the treasures of Doriath were slain as well, when they were assaulted by Beren and the green elves of Osiriand upon retreat. Belegost and Nogrond both would be drowned in the destruction of Beleriand, and their geographical location resides in what later became the Firth of Lun, a gulf where the Grey Havens empty out into the Great Sea. The survivors of the War of Wrath would make their way east to Khazad-dum, the mightiest of the Dwarven kingdoms. Khazad-dum was founded by Durin the Deathless, who awoke at Mount Gundabad, which marked the northern tip of the Misty Mountains, or the Hitheaglir in Sindarin. Being alone, Durin migrated south to the Vale of Azanulbizar on the eastern side of the mountains, where he came upon the lake of the Keledzaram, known as the Miromir. Gazing into the water, he saw upon his head a crown of 7 stars, even as the sun shone in the sky. Taking it as a positive sign, Durin settled in the caves of Keledzaram, forging what would become the great Khazad-dum, later known as Moria. Durin's stone was later erected at the site of the vision. Khazad-dum, which is Kuzdul for Mansion of the Khazad, was a spectacular achievement of the dwarves, housing several of their races throughout history, though much of the credit belongs to the Longbeards. Both a city and a mine, the halls were decorated with large columns and light shafts, as well as tunnels and large pits. The city spaces were mixed in amongst the mining areas, in this great spectacle of dwarven effort. Throughout the First Age, the realm grew to be widely revered throughout Beleriand. In the Second Age, it became host to the refugees of Nogrod and Belegost, whose skills in smithing and craft helped begin a great time of prosperity for Khazad-dum. The city would finally come to serve as a vital passing point between the east and west of the Misty Mountains. The west gate of Moria was constructed by the elven smith Celebrimbor during a time of peace with the elves of Eregion. When Sauron took the city of Eregion in Second Age 1697, the dwarves of Khazad-dum shut their gates and fought ongoing battles of their own against the orcs who had infiltrated the Misty Mountains. The Third Age saw a realm grown rich off the mithril it mined, to a place worthy of the title Black Pit, Moria. In Third Age 1980, the dwarves dug deep enough to awaken an ancient evil, a Balrog, that would claim the life of their king, Durin VI, as well as his son Naen's a year later. Durin's Bane, as it would come to be named, drove the dwarves away, and after some time, Moria was populated by orcs. The orcs remained there for many years, even lasting through the Battle of Azanulbizar in Third Age 2799, beneath the East Gate, and the attempt by Balin to reclaim the stronghold in Third Age 2989. The Balrog later encountered the Fellowship of the Ring in a desolate Moria, meeting its end in combat with Gandalf the Grey. Despite a long period of darkness, Moria would eventually be repopulated in the Fourth Age by the dwarves under the leadership of Durin VII, and they would remain there until the end of their days. Mount Gundabad in the north stood at the meeting place between Ered Mithrin, the Misty Mountains, and the mountains of Angmar. It was revered by the dwarves as the place where Durin the Deathless awoke, but it remained mostly inactive for centuries. In the 1690s of the Second Age, Sauron attacked Eriador and Eregion, and during the latter battle, he was thwarted by the dwarves of Khazad-dum. As they retreated behind the doors of Durin, sealing out the Dark Lord's forces, they became a major target of the orcs thereafter, leading to the first sacking of Gundabad in Second Age 1697. The orcs controlled Mount Gundabad and infested the Grey Mountains, successfully cutting off communication between Khazad-dum and the Iron Hills. Centuries later, after the rise and fall of Angmar, which included Mount Gundabad in its territory, Thrain II led a revolt against the orcs that still remained there. The War of Dwarves and Orcs, known as the Second Sacking of Gundabad, lasted from 2793 to 2799 in the Third Age. It would end in the climactic battle of Azanulbizar, in which the dwarves were victorious, but at a great cost, losing many important leaders such as Naen of the Iron Hills and Frerin, son of Thrain. The orcs stayed clear of the area for the next 100 years, but would eventually repopulate and plot from the mountain. Erebor had a tumultuous history for the dwarves, and remains an important realm in their history. It consisted of the Lonely Mountain, which stood out in the vast plains surrounding it, containing rare minerals, which ensured great riches for its inhabitants. The area also served as the source of the river Keldian, which ran through the Rovanion and out into the Sea of Rhun. Although inhabited since the Second Age, Erebor was founded as a true realm by the dwarves in 1999 of the Third Age by Thrain I, son of Naen I. Thrain had led the dwarves out of Moria after his father was slain by the Balrog. The Lonely Mountain was mined for its precious gems, including the Arkenstone, and the realm grew wealthy beyond measure. The town of Dale was built by men in the region to join in on the prosperity. However, in Third Age 2210, King Thorin I and his folk deserted the mountain in an effort to establish a colony in the Grey Mountains that would reunite the Longbeards. It would not last, and in 2590, after the War of the Dwarves and Dragons, King Thror returned to the Lonely Mountain. At the same time, Gror had initially left for the Iron Hills. For a short period of time, the dwarves there prospered again, further forging the halls of the Lonely Mountain and trading peacefully with the men of Dale. But in Third Age 2770, Erebor, as well as Dale, suffered the fury of the mighty Smaug, and those who survived were driven back into the Iron Hills. It was left abandoned once more. Gandalf the Grey saw the threat posed by a potential alliance between Sauron and Smaug, and with Thorin Oakenshield as well as Bilbo Baggins set forth the quest for Erebor to drive the dragon out for good in the events detailing The Hobbit. After a successful quest and the death of Smaug, Erebor would host the Battle of 5 Armies between the Orcs and Wargs, Elves of Mirkwood, Men of Esgaroth, and fellow Longbeards in the Dwarves of the Iron Hills, who came to rescue Thorin's company. King Dain Ironfoot, Gror's grandson, would leave the Iron Hills and lead the Longbeards once again from the stronghold of the Lonely Mountain. For much of the early history of Middle-earth, the Iron Hills served as a Longbeard settlement and source for mining iron ore, and eventually became a place of refuge for dwarves. It was not established as an official stronghold until 2590 of the Third Age, after Gror, son of Dain, moved there from the Grey Mountains, due to the tragedies committed by dragons on the dwarves. He would help grow the Iron Hills into much more than a mining settlement. They were not as wealthy as their relatives in Erebor, but that may have been the very reason they were not the first target of Smaug's destruction. After the mighty dragon attacked Erebor in 2770 of the Third Age, the Iron Hills became the sole dwarven colony of significance for the next 2 centuries. King Dain Ironfoot would go on to rule and eventually lead his armies south to defend Thorin after the death of Smaug in the Battle of the 5 Armies. As previously mentioned, he would go on to lead from Erebor. And from there, Erebor prospered peacefully until the War of the Ring, when an army of Easterlings laid siege to the mountain, while Minas Tirith was also attacked in the south. The dwarves and men of Dale suffered great losses in the slaying of their respective kings, but would eventually outlast the Easterlings, who fled after the news of Sauron's destruction. The remaining forces of dwarves and men chased them out of Erebor, and the region knew peace again for many years thereafter. The dwarven realms were few, but ever-changing, and all exemplified the mining nature of their peoples, as well as their capacity to forge goods of significant value. The steadfast nature of the dwarves serves as a reminder to us readers what value lies in family and discipline, as the bonds between them were ever strong and their skills in war and smithing were nearly unmatched. Which dwarven realm is greatest to you? Which one would you choose to live in or fight for? We hope you enjoyed another video about the wonderful world of Tolkien's writings. Please let us know what you would like to hear more about in the future, and remember to like and subscribe. As always, we look forward to meeting again in future videos. Namarie.